a freak wildfire, as some are calling it, led to the discovery of a mosaic that confirms what we've always believed to be true, what we've always known to be true about the Apostle Peter. And this is a very rare inscription that hasn't been found elsewhere. And let me share this video now. So, some of the background of this is that this is posted on CBN News, by the way, which is a Protestant news service. Interesting, because this seems to cut against a lot of Protestant theology. But the background here is that there was already an excavation site set up, and then a wildfire broke out. And the archaeologists thought, oh no, there goes all of our work up in smoke. This is basically the end of our excavation here because all of our equipment's going to get destroyed and everything. And actually, what ended up happening is that this fire revealed more land for them to excavate and made it much easier for them to make further discoveries. And it actually stopped. The fire stopped before it got to anything, before it destroyed anything crucial. So it's actually kind of a strange fire. I'm not going to go so far as to say it's miraculous, but many are saying that. And I think that there's reason to think in such a way. So let's hear a little bit from CBN News what went down here.
We went to the burnt area, still smoke in the air, smell. We came out almost completely black. But what we discovered was very important. We discovered how large the site is, with remains of houses, pottery here and there, tells us that the site is much, much, much bigger than we thought.
Bethsaida has now become one of the most significant New Testament finds in the Holy Land. Archaeologists uncovered a Byzantine church and a remarkable mosaic honoring Peter as the keeper of the keys.
Every inscription is.
So this is in Bethsaida, as he said, very important New Testament. I believe this is where Jesus fed the 5,000. This is where many miracles were performed by Jesus. And it's also the site of this ancient Byzantine church, which contains the inscription, a mosaic with the inscription, Peter, keeper of the keys. And we're going to read some articles that show that this is actually, the inscription says even more than Peter, keeper of the keys. But let's see a little bit further what they say here.
Interesting and important. This one became rare and has a great importance to the site and to the Christian world.
Yeah.
There is no other inscription in the Eastern Mediterranean. It is mentioned as the keeper of the keys.
For Dr. Stephen Notley,
that's important. I mean, this is in the Mediterranean. This is in a Byzantine church, which would be, many would say that this is maybe an Eastern Orthodox type of church. Now, at this time in history, all of the church was one. It was all the Catholic Church. But even in a Byzantine church, Peter was recognized as the keeper of the keys. Very important discovery.
Who first proposed this as the biblical Bethsaida, the discovery affirms the truth of Scripture.
I'm a person who's a person of deep faith. The Israeli archaeologists all know it. I make no secret about it. It's something that motivates me in terms of my work. My career has been invested in trying to understand better the Gospels as they unfold in this land in terms of land and culture and language. And so when I encounter these things, it reinforces for me the reality of my faith.
Yeah, the stones.
Yeah. What's interesting is that, again, CBN, this is a Protestant news network. And also, it sounds like, just based on the way they speak, that many of the archaeologists here are Protestants. And this certainly cuts against the Protestant understanding of, for example, Matthew chapter 16, verse 18, where Jesus says, "You are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven." A lot of Protestants kind of have the idea that that didn't actually mean anything, that Jesus was actually just speaking, metaphorically or whatever. And so Peter having the keys to the kingdom didn't really mean a whole lot, and doesn't mean a whole lot for us today. But it does mean a whole lot, according to this archaeological find, for the early Christians. And let's look to this news article here that actually reveals a bit more about this inscription, because it actually has much more depth to it than even what this brief video gives us. So let's take a look here. If you guys are here live, which you are, if you are hearing this, then please make sure to like the stream. We got 130 people in here. That's great. But we only have 29 likes on the stream. So if we can get those numbers closer together, that would be wonderful. Also, make sure to check out the pinned comment so we can help meet our December goal for Patreon members. Now, let's take a look at this article. I might have to reformat a bit, as is usually the case. But here is a picture of this mosaic that we are discussing. And it says not only keeper of the keys, but it says the chief of apostles. Chief of apostles. Now, obviously, as Catholics, we recognize that Peter was the chief of the apostles, he was the keeper of the keys, and that authority persisted into his successors, which are the Roman bishops. And even the Eastern Orthodox will often say that, yes, of course, Peter was the first among equals, but that they differ in the understanding of that authority or the scope of that authority. However, being the chief of the apostles, I think, means that Peter had more authority than the other apostles, quite clearly. So here we have this picture. It says the chief of the apostles invoked in this mosaic inscription from biblical Bethsaida, being cleaned by Professor Notley and his wife Sunya, must refer to St. Peter, the apostle, indicating a special connection between the site and the saint. So I believe, I read this article just before going live here, but I believe that the inscription doesn't actually say Peter. It says these different titles of Peter: chief of the apostles, keeper of the keys. And because of those titles, everybody just knows that that is referring to Peter, obviously. So this article goes on to say, archaeologists will certainly never find a doorbell plate inscribed with Peter's name at either Capernaum or Bethsaida, but one particular find gets them as close as possible to such a confirmation. A large mosaic inscription, written in Greek, was unearthed in the Basilica's diaconicon, naming a local benefactor and imploring the chief of the apostles and the keeper of the keys of heaven. This apostle cannot be anyone but Peter, obviously. A request for the apostles' intercession intimates his close identification with the church. Peter's association with churches in Byzantine Palestine is rare, typically occurring only at places with a connection to his appearance in the Gospels. The discovery of a petition to St. Peter in the basilica at El Araj should remove any doubt that the church recalls the testimony of John 1:44 that the home of Peter, Andrew, and Philip was in Bethsaida. So usually you're only going to find references, at least in this region, to Peter if it is a site that is relevant to one of the appearances of Peter in the Gospels. That's basically what this is saying. And so this confirms that this was a site that was relevant to Peter. And they're saying that this is probably either the home or near the home of Peter. But interestingly, it involves the title of Peter as keeper of the keys, chief of the apostles, and it includes an invocation, a request for the apostles' intercession, which means this is a clear confirmation that Peter was obviously the chief of the apostles, keeper of the keys, but also that the early Christians believed you could ask for the intercession of saints like the apostles even after their earthly death. Otherwise, this would make no sense. So this was actually in estimates I've seen have dated this what is it called? This inscription from, I believe, around between the 300s and 600s, somewhere in that range, which means this is a very early attestation to, like I said, the titles of Peter being the chief apostle, which affirms the papacy, by the way, which is where we get the papacy from, and also the idea that you can ask the saints to intercede for us here on earth. Another article that I have here touches more on the nature of the fire that revealed all of this, which is really interesting, and some of the reasons that people are calling this a miracle. This article calls it a freak fire. The article is actually titled "Freak Wildfire Exposes Lost Biblical Village Beneath the Ashes." And so they say when flames engulfed the area of El Araj excavation, director Dr. Stephen Notley thought their work was ruined. "Oh my goodness," he said, "this is going to upend all of our excavation." But as soon as the ground cooled, archaeologists realized that the fire had peeled away layers of brush and soil, exposing walls, pottery, and Roman period remains that had never been seen. And Dr. Moti Aviam says, "We found the remains of walls on the surface. Everything from the surface is Roman period." So, yeah, this is while the Roman Empire was still standing. Even more astonishing, the fire stopped right at the tarps covering a Byzantine basilica, leaving a major biblical inscription untouched. "No one can explain it," Aviam said. Notley called it the hand of God. And so that under that basilica is where we find this mosaic that we've been talking about this whole time. So under that basilica, archaeologists had already uncovered a 6th century mosaic, an inscription honoring Peter as the keeper of the keys. When the letters apostles came out in Greek, everyone was like a rocket sent to the sky, Aviam said. The inscription is unique in the ancient world, and it confirmed what many suspected. This wasn't just another fishing village, it was Peter's home. So really interesting stuff. Really cool. And I think this has got to be something where if you're an Eastern Orthodox or especially if you're a Protestant, it's got to be something where you're like, okay, like the church there recognized a special role of Peter that looks more like the papacy today than we might have previously, given credence to. All right. What's up, everybody in the chat? I see you all here. Damien says, "This is absolutely huge. Let's pray for the conversion of Orthodox and Protestants through St. Peter's intercession." Yeah, I found it strange that they posted this on a Protestant news network, although they did try to really downplay they didn't really touch on the implications of this for, things like the papacy and stuff like that. But this is a huge Protestant news network, has 2.64 million subscribers. This video has been seen so far by 170,000 people who are mostly presumably Protestant. I think that's mostly who follows this channel. So I do imagine like information like this getting out to people and people realizing, the early church actually thought Peter was the keeper of the keys, the chief of the apostles, the rock on which the church was built. That's quite surprising probably for a lot of people. Just a freaking mom said, "It's weird that Protestants will believe Ron Wyatt, but not these other discoveries." I don't know who Ron Wyatt is, but yes, that is true. Pendragon with the super chat, thank you. "I think Orthodox will just say it affirms Peter being first among equals." Unfortunately, I think anybody can kind of, through their own minds, can kind of convince themselves that, well, I can interpret this in a way that is still in line with what I already believe. So I'm going to I'll just reinterpret this so that I don't have to change my beliefs. But again, this confirms something that we all kind of, at least everybody watching this, probably already knows. We see the attestations of the early church to something special about the Bishop of Rome, about the church in Rome. I've gone through some of this before, so I won't go in a ton of depth. I also cover this in that 4.5-hour video titled, I think it's like 264 minutes on why Catholicism is true or something like that. So go and check out that video if you're interested in more depth here. But we do see Pope Clement I, who was the Bishop of Rome. I believe he was like the 3rd or 4th Pope after Peter. And he wrote in, the late 1st century. This is while, Revelation was written around the same time as this, depending on who you ask, of course. Scholars differ on when things were written. But this Pope Clement I says that his council, what he writes to the church in Corinth, is from God. And he says, if anyone disobey the things which have been said by God through us, let him know that they will involve themselves in transgression and in no small danger. So even then, disobeying the Bishop of Rome was seen, even if you're a distant, church that's not in Rome, it was seen as a sin. So that definitely affirms some kind of a special authority that is even seen in the first century. Ignatius of Antioch says, the church at Rome has envied no one, but others you have taught. I desire only that which you have enjoined in your instructions may remain in force. And he also calls the church in Rome the church which holds the presidency. Many other similar attestations. I won't get into all of the details here, but this archaeological find certainly affirms essentially what we've all, as Catholics, who are, I assume most people watching this are Catholics, what we've all known about the papacy for a long time. The Chattachuman is here, and he says, in 10 seconds, explain how Thomas' physical promotion differs from Augustinian moral motion in moving the will while still preserving freedom. It's like one is like super cool and the other one is like even cooler. So there you go. I hope that helps. Another source that we can look to on the special authority of the church in Rome is one that is often overlooked, and one that, to be honest, I didn't know about until quite recently, thanks to some of the work of Christian B. Wagner, who is also great. But this is Saint Optatus, and this document looks awful. Whoever designed this page should be reprimanded severely. But let me see if I can try to make this a little better. Okay. So this is Saint Optatus. Let me see. When was he right? I believe he was in the 4th century, I want to say. But this is him writing against the Donatists, which was an early heresy in the church that caused a lot of problems. And he writes that the Donatists allege that they have some sort of a party in the city of Rome. The Donatists were claiming to have a church in Rome. And he called this a lie. It's a branch of your error growing out of a lie, not from the root of truth. In a word, were Macrobius to be asked where he sits in the city, will he be able to say on Peter's cathedra? I doubt whether he has even set eyes upon it. So, in settling disputes, it seems as though the Donatists and St. Optatus acknowledged that having some kind of a standing in Rome is what gave you authority. It's certainly what gave you credibility in these types of disputes. So obviously, the church in Rome has always had a special place of authority, and we continue to see that with every archaeological discovery. The archaeology continues to confirm that the papacy is legit.